Oh, whistle. Where did that whistle come from? Oh, so that feel. No, that's a great whistle. Thank you very much, Rebecca. I want to say hello to everybody, and I want to thank you for being here this evening. Please come on in and find a seat. We're going to get started with the presentation part. To start the evening off, I wanted to present a message from a particularly special guest who's able to be here tonight. And her presence makes us feel extremely grateful. So bear with me for just a moment while I get it set up.
Hello, I'm Gordon-Brannan, Professor Emeritus from Speech and Human Sciences at Portland State University. It gives me pleasure to welcome you to this very special celebration. It's 50 years since the program in Speech and Human Sciences was established at Portland State.
As many of you know, Mary had a major stroke over the summer, and we're genuinely touched that she can be here tonight. Her presence here is a testament to the tremendous progress that she's been making. And I think I can speak for all of us when I say welcome to you too, Mary. We're really pleased that you're here. Now, I have one additional speaker who's not on the program. We're very pleased to have this person here tonight. He's asked to say a few words, and I'd like to call him up to the stage. This is the president of Portland State University, Wim Wiewel.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for giving me a few minutes to welcome you and to thank you. This is just such an impressive department. Just even looking through the little booklet, the names, Frank Roberts, Vogie, who I knew from his activities in the RAPS organization, and of course Mary and Steve Brennan, who I know have been so special to this department, but also to the university as a whole. And to have that kind of strength and history and continuity with a group of people that is in many ways so small as a faculty, and it has made a difference in so many people's lives, is just incredibly impressive. When I met with the department in the past, I shared my own story of appreciation for the work that you do, just a very small part of it, that when I first came to the United States as an exchange student, I was 18, I very quickly decided that I got really tired of the moment I opened my mouth, people asking me, where are you from? Where are you from? It wasn't that I was embarrassed about where I was from, but I didn't want to just be seen as the foreigner all the time. I wanted to just be seen as who I was. So I was fortunate to be in a high school in suburban New York where they had a speech therapist. And so I started working with the speech therapist to get rid of my accent as much as possible. As you can tell, he may not have been perfectly successful, but I've come a long way, baby. So I've always felt I owe your profession a great deal of gratitude, and I know that, of course, most of your work is frankly with people who need it a lot more and whose lives it makes a much bigger difference than I could ever make in mine. but nonetheless, I appreciate the work you do, the great teaching, of course, the preparation of professionals who are so important in the schools in Oregon, the work that you do in terms of service and testing for people. You truly exemplify letting knowledge serve the city, and congratulations on this anniversary. Thank you very much.
I'm not sure if I'm plugged in. Just a moment. We have all these fancy mute buttons. Still trying to figure which one is on and which one is off. Another of our great supporters, particularly in recent years, has been our Associate Dean in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, Drake Mitchell. He's come to know and understand our department in a way that I think is rather unusual for university administrators, and we've really benefited from his individual attention. So we're very pleased that he's agreed to say a few words today. Drake Mitchell.
Well, thank you very much. That's, I think, the nicest introduction I've ever heard. Since when I came into my position as coming from the chair of the physics department, I said, so what does speech and hearing do? And it took me quite a little while, and I don't think until right now anyone has ever said that I actually understand this department. But it has been a pleasure to get to know. A few years ago, a dean sort of made a different division and made a big School of Arts and Sciences, and my full title is actually Associate Dean for Natural Science. And we sat around in a room, and the sociologists and the psychologists and some other people said, well, are we really natural science? And Christina quickly said, well, my department is the only one that actually has science in the title. So she's been that kind of cooperative ever since. I just want to make 2 points. I want to make 2 points about this department. One is that they know, and I'd like for them to know that other people are noticing the phenomenal growth that has been in this department. I've looked at these numbers so often now I don't have to get them back out of my pocket. I looked again, but this past spring, this department graduated 3 times as many bachelor's degrees as they did 5 years ago, and twice as many master's degrees as they did 5 years ago. So both of those programs are growing over a time when the overall university grew those degrees 10 or 15%. So that has been, and yes, I will hear on Monday, the chair will remind me that there has not been a commensurate growth in their faculty. But the other point, so they've been able to figure out to continually to do more with not necessarily a lot more resources. The other point I want to make is I think in my experience here, in my observation, that part of the draw to pull this many people in the room, that kind of success I just elaborated, and other kinds of success, are really a growth of a history in this department of outstanding leadership. Of Dr. Christina Gilbert-City-Newman now, her predecessor Shelley Shaban, all the chairs before. As far as I can tell, there was never a time when this department did not have outstanding leadership. And this is what the accomplishments coming out of this department now are the kind of results that will produce. Thank you.
So as you all know, we're here celebrating 50 years of history of the Speech and Hearing Sciences program. So this history began in 1964 when Bob English secured funding to hire the initial cadre of faculty members who would form the core of the program for decades to come. The initial cohort of students consisted of 6 students. And they've been universally regarded, with everybody who I've talked with as I've put this event together, everybody has talked about those initial 6 students as a very special group. And I've come to collect a lot of snippets of PSU department history, and I came across a particular clip that I wanted to share with everybody tonight. It happened 29 years ago on the occasion of Bob English's retirement. Several of our first students were able to be there, And here's what they had to say.
To come up here and make light of Bob English. It's not difficult at all, but I have a few very serious things I wish to tell you. I think they're very significant in the career of R.H. English. But before I do that, I have to tell you a little bit about myself. The first thing is I'm Ron Pelson.
Ron Pelson! Now I know! I remember!
Pardon me, ladies and gentlemen.
We were the first students. The first students.
Anybody know this story?
I'm Daryl Anderson. Daryl, what Anderson?
There's another one. Steve McFarland, ladies and gentlemen. The first great graduate student in the program.
How have you been?
I've been working.
I've been making young
Great leads.
I'm a Smith, I'm a Simcoe of your man. I have to do Studebakers and Packers now as well. I learned something from English too about that. That's why I got an advantage. It was James Price, I will send them away. I remember that. And I remember, you know, working with English in the area was always really helpful because I raised ponies, you know, and they're always a little hoarse. I've been thinking about it. You do? Well, this every day. Things that we thought still hold true today. And I can remember this is a break goes off one of the symptoms. I can remember him standing up in front of the group saying, now this is the nose. And you see who puts one sissy. Oh, no, this thing goes, yeah, I did this.
That good-looking blonde, please stand up.
I got Linda English. Linda English.
I'm going to get back into the profession. I've decided it's about time, and I, for all those years, I've kept my speech bubble. New choice stimulus phrases for the kids. I remember distinctly in clinic 301 or something like that. Bob English saying, you've got to get these kids to talk. You've got to get them excited. He said, do things like, Lord, love a duck. Or God's bread. Or perhaps good night, nurse.
Tonight is that when he stands up a little bit later, he's able, you'll notice that one hand is longer than the other. At one point, for how long was it? A month? 2 months? He carried around a briefcase with bricks in the bottom of it that one of the students had put in there, and it can only be told tonight that that was Joan McMahon.
I think we've given enough harm for one evening.
So that was 29 years ago, in December of 1985, and today we're very pleased to have two of those same former first students here in the audience. I'd like to welcome up Mr. Bob Pelson. And preceding him onto the stage is Daryl Anderson.
I'm getting dressed.
I realize we all have something in common. None of us know what we're going to say. This is fabulous.
True.
We all order that terms.
So we all set?
Forget the first comments. No, you're not allowed. I have to say that first Steve McFarland, the third leg of the school, couldn't be here tonight. He wanted to give his condolences. His son is very ill. He has a child that has handicaps and having to stay home. He very much wanted to be here tonight, and he has to convey his best to Portland State, particularly to this department, Mary and Bob. I'm sorry I couldn't be here. The only other thing I have to say is about the speech bucket. Okay. What is a speech bucket? Many of you may not remember, no one probably remembers the speech bucket. But Dr. English, in the first class we had, said, you've got to have a speech bucket. What's it for? Well, it's going to hold all the phonemes of English so that you'll be able to have the pictures to be able to say the sounds. Now you just go out and buy them or on the computer and you have all the neat pictures to view. But we didn't have them then. This was before language had been invented. We didn't have So I'd stay up till 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, and I would cut out a picture of a thimble, a thistle, and a thumb. And then I would glue them with Elmer's glue. And we get to bed about midnight, maybe this will work. I'd get up in the morning and look at it, and the glue bleeds through the. So it looked like a cross between a Rorschach test and so I got a B and Rod got an A, and he was in audiology. So anyway, something that's hurt me for a lot of years, and I just want to get that off. You got a very high B.
Is it my turn now?
Well,
Well, first I want to say thank you to Andy for inviting me and Jen and Lambert for bringing all this to my attention. I am so pleased to be here. You know, this is much better than my 55-year high school reunion life. It comes with a lot less baggage. How did I get started? Well, I'll make it quick. In December of 1963, I returned stateside after 4 years in the Air Force, and I decided I've got to get an education. Air Force was good, but I didn't want to make a career. So I followed then a lady in my life, Mary Jane Parkinson, in Portland State. She was like in her third or fourth year of general speech. She was going to be a speech teacher, maybe a speech clinician. She wasn't sure. So I came to Portland State, matriculated into the program with Bob English, and, Ben Padro and Frank Roberts, and others in general speech. I thought, you know, you got to get general speech. And I said, well, I need a minor in psychology, so I started in that vein. In the spring of 1964, I went to a Pi Kappa Delta speech banquet. We did. After the banquet, standing on a street corner, up walked Bob English. He was the world's best crossover. He came up and he said, and I knew who he was vaguely, and he introduced himself. He said something to the effect, young man, I'd like to have you come and meet with me in my office. I did. And it was speech science, phonetics, voice and diction, and on and on. It was a turning point in my life. It was a critical point. I didn't realize how. So that's how I got started. And it was just straight into speech pathology with a secondary teaching credential in general speech, because back then you had to have that secondary certificate, at least the basic. So often was on my way. Then, another turning point. I was introduced to Jim Mauer, audiology. And that fit my brain a little better than speech. And so, again, on another venue into audiology. So I went through the master's program in audiology, and then on to the University of Washington. And I have to tell you, Portland State at that time, and it probably still is, I'm so far out of it now, was like family. The parking down in the tombs of their South Park Hall was like going home. It was warm and friendly. It was a comfortable place to be. And Bob English and Bob Casteel and Jim Mauer were like the white hats of the department. They were there to support the students, give them lots of direction, and always helpful. I think of Bob English and Bob Casteel like, you know, the Lone Ranger and Tonto. And along with Jim Mauer, as they progressed through their careers and we went on and they finally retired and sort of rode into the sunset, the smokes settled, the dust went away, and I think all of us would agree they could be very, very proud of what they accomplished. I mean, look at this program. I had no idea how it's grown. It's wonderful, and it's truly a pleasure to say I was a part of that at the beginning. How about you?
Well,
You started in grade school.
yeah, when you and I got asked to do this, I said, you know, as we decline, things, we get older, things begin to decline. And the first is memory. In 1961, and I was a senior in high school, and I was interested in speech. Living on my street was a man by the name of Dr. Leroy Pearson, who was head of the Division of Continuing Education. And I told him I was interested in speech, and he said, I have someone for you to meet. And I met Dr. Robert English, and my life was never the same. I got a master's in 1969. He said, let's have you see some speech. Because I said, I don't know if I want to do this. He said, would you like to see some in action? Absolutely. He said, go up to the Crippled Children's Division. At that time, University of Oregon Medical School. On a Saturday, and I'll let you watch something. And I go up there, and this was a new building. We built in 55, the Crippled Children's Division. One-wing mirrors, and behind there is a clinician, a young student with red hair who was very dynamic, and he was fabulous working with these kids and working with one or two or three kids at a time. And that was Don Nelson, who I said was with us today. You had red hair back then. It was his, seeing him and meeting Dr. English that really made me feel like this could be my life's work. So that was a fabulous thing. I started in 1961 as a freshman, and we had South Park Hall, and State Hall, and College Center, and Lincoln Hall, all of which have been renamed to better, I believe. But my tuition was less than $100. I think it was $95. You believe it was the books were $24.50. We had to buy a lot of books. We had to buy Kenyon and Knott, the Pronouncing Dictionary of American English, the phonetics class, and Van Riper's speech collection. Probably. And so it was just a fabulous time to be there, and we just enjoyed it very, very much. Once I graduated, we were waiting for the program to keep coming behind us, and English and Casteel would say, hang on, it's going to keep developing. So I taught for a year and a half with Rod's wife, Mary Jane Pelson, out of Marshall High School, and suddenly we got a phone call. We have some federal funding, money. So back we came.
And Steve came, and Rod, and I, and the others, and we just had a fabulous 2 years in the master's program. Steve, as I said, wanted to be here. He was maybe one of the most successful ever in speech pathology. Steve ended up being the dean of the School of Medicine at the University of Reno. The only dean that has ever been a speech pathologist in history
Of a medical profession.
of a medical school. There are very few that are not MDs that are in the medical school. Anyway, so Steve did well, and we just sort of fell in his shadow.
Very briefly about Daryl. We did go through the bachelor's and master's program together. We did our doctorates together, Daryl's PhD in audiology. I went away for a couple of years, came back to Oregon, and he called me and said, "Hey Rod, there's a position at OHSU." So for the next 25 years, our office doors were side by side. He was in the training program, I was strictly in the clinical program. So we've been bumming around together, having fun, eating too many tacos over the years, and eating dinners, the whole story there, at night down in the belly of Burger Hall. And he still tolerates me as vice person.
To find a speech pathology program, go to any university, look for the oldest building. Sometimes move upstairs, out of room 77. Upstairs, this is mine. You never knew what the weather was.
That's right, it was always dark where we were.
You mentioned that the kingpins of this program are Dr. Bobby and Dr. Casteel. And many programs have developed and folded in the years, not in this state, but in all states. But these guys have it right. They have the drive, they have the humor, they have the intellect to make things work. And it was fantastic how they stayed. And they took care of students. I felt I had a mentor from 1961 to 69. Anytime I had a problem, just call and talk to Bob English or Bob Casteel. And
They were more than just our teachers and our mentors.
they were a family.
Family. And you don't often find.
As you will see, we've got a few, you got this? Sure. And, you know, these are going to be black and white, but we're so old, even our dreams are in black.
Oh, yeah.
Where did you go?
This is technology.
This is a speech too. Some of you may not have seen it. This is not hooked in cord or anything. But if a child can't understand, maybe if you speak into one ear through a tube. I don't know why they always, when that didn't work, I tried mental telepathy. This young man turned out to be president of this university. Anyway, we worked on things, and then we used the looking glass. And
Allyson Wonderland.
if you could see how bad you were saying wug instead of rug, if you could see that, you'd start moving. That's a possibility.
Diane is the horse.
Bob English.
Bob Casteel.
Bob Casteel. Right after this, both my wife and I started smoking a pipe. This is cool. Within time, seriously.
Jim Bauer. We got our audiometer, so we were high tech. I can't even remember what brand it was. Pelson, I think, or something such. Al probably remembers better than I do. Al Hicks were. Raise your hand. There you are.
That's the well-known 15C. And it has to be on for 30 minutes
Before you begin your
First apple product.
Now, I don't know much about Project Army.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, I drove that thing all over the state of Oregon. From 1976 to 1983, the Oregon Lions Sight and Hearing Foundation funded it after the Murdoch Foundation's grant ran out. In 1970, I helped Jim Maurer spec out that truck. My first life, I was a truck driver.
And you like to go back?
Anyway, the Murdoch Foundation only funded it for 5 years, and I came to Portland State to teach in 1976. And as far as the university was concerned, that thing could sit out there and rust off its wheels. But the Lions, in 1976, as you may remember, because Helen Keller was both deaf and blind, and she asked the Lions to be her Knights of Blindness in 1926. In 1976, she died in 66, and then in 76, Lions International decided to go sight and hearing. And the Lions came to Portland State University, and I was the young fledgling new audiology professor, and I got to talk to the Lions, and so they funded it. They repaired it, and they put their Lions placards on the side of it.
His memory's still good.
Yeah.
Now you're still a good truck driver.
Yeah, this is Jim Bauer doing a neurogotomy from the wrong side.
Got a lot of demonstrations in those days.
Oh, here we are. Now, I have to tell you about this. When we got this gadget, we were scientists. This is a sound spectrometer. And with it, you could see graphically formants. Now, how many people know what a formant is? I'm still not good at it. You can see them, or at least I thought we were. It was a wonderful tool. You can speak into this gadget and look at the resonant characteristics of the vocal tract. It was interesting because we could read about it, or we could find these keys.
Do you still have this seersuckers?
I got aware of it.
Oh, yeah. English was a taskmaster, and he wanted to make sure everything was done right. And so he would occasionally look over our shoulder. And his assistant Diane there is this guy is just sweating bullets. Our scientific equipment at that time was somewhat suspect, as you can see here. The Speech Science Laboratory.
It was in a closet. In that room we had a wet spirometer and a chirograph. Wet spirometer, as you probably know, is a device that tells you lung volume.
But anyway, room
89.
89 doesn't exist anymore.
Right, that's what we're talking about.
They boarded it up afterwards, and no one was able to get in because of the equipment. Before every exam, Robert Casteel would walk around with his skull. And so here's the record for you. Anyway, anatomy and physiology was another class.
Yes.
You had any more?
We knew that was a skull. This is Casteel in the box. And she's getting therapy here. We use two forms of reinforcement. Pavlovian, shock therapy, Skinnerian, M&M. response.
You had to, in 1965, Dad was to think inside the box. Much of all the time we were there, speech and hearing was under the auspices of the speech department, and it couldn't have been under a better department than that. What an exciting department. Ben Padro was the chair at that time we were there. He had a college bowl team, which in 1965 won 5 weeks in a row and flew from here to New York, back to New York, beat every team in the country by more than anyone ever had or ever did since. It was a junior college bowl. And they brought that excitement back. And when they would come back, Padro would talk to us about what happened in New York, how fabulous this all was, and how what a great team they had together. But all that flooded into the speech and hearing sciences as well, because we benefited from the expertise and excitement of the speech department. So it was just great. This is Ben Padro on the left, and myself, and Jody Walton, and Mary Jane Pelson, and Rod, as she knows, winning debate students with Coach Ben Padro. Now, Jody Walton was a winner. Mary Jane and Rod and I don't quite remember ever winning. It's in that book, The History of...
So it's got to be true.
Do you remember? Maybe.
We always won.
We always win.
Oh, this is good. This is good. I have to talk a little bit about that. We're standing up here and saying, well, we're the first graduate students to get our degrees at Portland State Speech and Science program. That's not totally true, and I should stop here. Because we have someone in the audience who graduated just a little before us. Would Bev Dixon please stand up? She cheated.
She was different from us. How?
Can I just tell them that, Rod?
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to have a bachelor's degree in speech, Pat, from a school in Colorado. And when I moved to Oregon, I was employed by the Park Rose School District, who had a wonderful school board member named Barbara Roberts. And they always gave us 3 credit hours a term, free, if we wanted to go to school. And that was just like a gift. So I immediately, in 1961, started taking graduate classes through Department of Division of Continuing Education or something. But eventually, when Portland State started this department, those graduate classes went through this department. And so I had 55 graduate hours that I just got to take from Harold Lillywhite and from G. Paul Moore, in voice from Florida, and from Stanley Ainsworth from Tennessee, who did the articulation stuff, from Mackenzie Buck, who is an authority in cleft palate but had a stroke and learned how to talk again so he could teach us how to do it differently. And so when I came to Portland State for my master's degree, I already had all these hours. And the 3 boy wonders. They tolerated me in their classes. But what they didn't know was that all those hours I had ahead of them caused me to get the first master's degree 3 months ago. He went, they're supposed to be first. Because I brought them goodies.
There's the truth. So the lady holding pie is Belle. It's George Washington's birthday. You can see Dr. Bauer here, Rod with a narrow tie, and I'm wearing Mr. Rogers' sweater. We celebrated everything because we really slept together. The camaraderie was tremendous. George Washington's birthday, we had cherry pie. Thank you very much. She was sort of a mother. She was.
I still think
And she also wrote down the questions to the 6-hour written exam so you guys would have it when you
This is both blurry and fuzzy because that's how we work.
we still are looking already.
This is an action convention in
1991 Atlanta. We came together, all of us. I don't know where Beverly was, but we came together, and there's Al Alvarado on the far left, Steve McFarland, of course, Joan McMahon, yours truly, and then there's Daryl. That's it.
Okay, this is, the next lady you're going to see is Dr. Bob Casteel making comments about Dr. English and his retirement 9 years ago. And we thought you ought to take a look at this, how much these guys mean to each other, how much they love each other, and how these guys really, with a snip and the foundation is broken. So take a look.
This is one time I don't have to have a timer. I don't know if you all met Rhea Paul, who has come and will start in January, following in the footsteps of Bob English. We're so delighted to have her from Yale. English was so enthralled and such a person would come to our program that he said to Mary, may I greet her, give a little talk on behalf of the program? Well, he said, I'll just talk about Yale. And he took 15 minutes on Y, 10 minutes on A, 20 minutes on L. The rest of the hour on E, and Mary leaned over to me and said, thank God we didn't take the one from Massachusetts. I'm going on my 30th year in the state system. I'm going on my 29th year of working with Bob English, sharing offices with him, sharing joys with him. He's the person that taught me outlining. So, he didn't know he could do that, eh? I wish I had a blackboard so I could put it all up there. We worked a long time, and there's been years I couldn't share these stories. I finally had the opportunity. His discussion was the fourth one under testing, and I'm sure a lot of students have experienced this. Test discussion because he liked to encourage students. You earned the highest B I have ever given. My destiny gave me the lowest A you ever get. Him talking. Bob Blakely, 1953. He's walking across the University of Oregon campus. Here comes Bob charging along with the briefcase. He said, don't stop me. I'm not in a hurry, I don't have time to talk. In fact, it took him 10 minutes to explain what he had to do and why he didn't understand. Then there's English from McFarland to Casteel. When he was director, I lived in Lowell, he lived in Lake Oswego, McFarland lived in Gresham. didn't cost 10 cents in calibration, so you'd have McFarland relay. Then there was a 1:30 a.m. call. His best working Bob Casteel, I'm resigning. I'm going back to California to teach. I said, if you don't make sense when you awaken me at 1:30, I'm not talking to you, and I hung up. I don't think I've ever hung up on him in my life. I go back, I get to sleep. At 2 o'clock he calls, and he said, I'm sorry I awakened you. We're celebrating the evening. We're in the same room, 3:30. Bob, I'm saying, I've got to go to sleep. It's been a joyous evening, but I've got to go to sleep. Bob English says, yes, my talking's keeping me awake too. Yeah, you did do that, right, Bob? I'm not going to tell it all. Finally, let me tell you how much I appreciated the first 10 years at PSU with Bob directing the program. For the most part, he did it on 3 hours sleep per night, if you don't count the 5-hour nap from 5 p.m. till 11. In case you're confused, you have to really love someone to needle them this much in public. There's one person, I'm so delighted that Pat and Harold Lillywhite are here because I know how much they mean to Bob. But another very significant person in his past wrote a letter, could not be here, but sent a letter to the director of his dissertation. I'd like to just quote the last paragraph. So let me say, Bob, that in my opinion, you have done everything so well. As a family man, as a soldier, as an educator, and as a person. Someone's been with him for 25 years. As a family man, Linda, Sharon, Roberta, we're really proud of your dad. Captain English, fellow English, my buddy.
Following that, Dr. English, being Dr. English, had his final comments. He always had to say, so we'll watch him do that.
We have a special speaker here tonight who was not, I must emphasize, not on the program. Any living resemblance to him and Santa Claus is pure. And here is Robert H. English.
Bear with me. I am not going to cry, but I've already done a little bit of it. I want to thank everyone here, but I also want to say a few words. Now, if you can follow my outline, remember that if you have a Roman numeral 1, you must always have a Roman numeral 2. If you have a letter A, you must have a B. If you have an Arabic numeral 1, you must have an Arabic numeral 2, and so on. I do have to say this. When I went into theater, I learned 3 very important phrases. Those phrases were these: there shall be no compromise between the true and the false. I don't think you've heard that one very often. The other one is that the show must go on, and the third thing I can't remember. I want to say this. This is one of the greatest honors I've had, and I've received many honors. I always like to look at them as honors. Some people have called them other things. But I want to say that to be initiated into the famous order of retirement, I'm going to join some distinguished people. I can't name all, but I can name a few that you know. When I can join the Harold Lilly Lights, when I can join the Cam Woods, when I can join the Francis Gibsons, when I can join Frank Roberts, when I can join Jack Arts, and so on, I feel very, very proud and very, very humble. And so with that, I want to say thank you, wonderful people, students, former students, husbands, wives, and friends. This has been more pleasant to me than I would let on to my colleagues. I almost didn't want to come tonight for fear of what was going to be done. As I left, Steve Kozikov, and by golly, doesn't look nice tonight. I've never seen him in a suit, and he looks fabulous. But he and our distinguished director, head, we're still calling you a head, chairman of the department. I don't like head, it reminds me of the Navy. And just the two of them. They get out and they open the doors to those, what do we call those stairwells? And they echo. And they get out there and they say, wait till tonight. And I want to say this, that I wouldn't have missed this for all the tea in China. Because I have seen some of you I haven't seen in years, and that is a pleasure. And I want to tell you that we are a collection of those with whom we interact. And I have interacted with most of you. If you find something enjoyable in me, look in the mirror and say thank you. If you find something that is not enjoyable, you'll blame it on someone else, I think.
Why we love these guys. Bob English, Bob Casteel, and Jim Bell.
If, just for fun, everybody that had something to do with Gordon State before 1970, could you stand up? If you can still stand up. These were the roots of the program, and get a chance to talk to these people. It's fantastic. I want to be a speech pathologist and work with children and work with families. Don Nelson, why don't you come on up, Don? You want me to say more than this? Of course.
You can stand up. It's okay. It's okay.
All right, thank you. Does it sort of astonish you in a way that this group graduated as many people as they did? A little bit of back history, not when I started in speech pathology, but I think back at University of Utah and so forth. This is a different kind of a history. starts with this. Dwight Eisenhower was president. Don't worry, don't worry. A fellow named Richard Nixon was vice president. The Academy Award for Best Picture was Around the World in 80 Days. The Academy Award winning Best Actor was Yul Brynner. The Academy Award Best Actress was Ingrid Bergman. And about this time, Casteel's grandkids were saying, "Who the hell is he talking about?" The #1 song was Heartbreak Hotel, sung by the most popular TV show, I Love Lucy. And this is my favorite. The first class postage for a 1-ounce letter was, who said 3 cents? 3 cents. That year was 1956. That's the year Bob and I met 58 years ago. We were master's graduates hired by one of the nicest gentlemen of the profession you've all heard about already, Harold Lillywhite, to work as speech therapist at what was then called the Crippled Children's Division of the University of Oregon Medical School. We did diagnostic evaluations and clinical therapy, often really not knowing what they were. But a wonderful learning experience. We were paid the handsome salary of $5,000 a year. And fortunately, as the years passed, we doubled that. I think somebody told me when I was going into the profession a long time ago, don't ever expect a lot of money if you go into this profession. And that turned out to be pretty nice. As our friendship grew, so did my admiration for Bob's considerable clinical skills. A quiet and comforting demeanor with children, and a steady influence for parents. He was a remarkable teacher and a counselor for trainees and students. Whenever you asked Bob a question, his response was not always immediately forthcoming. You had experience with that. The table, the relatives. It was a bit of a pause, but it gave you some consolation thinking that he's trying to give you the best answer he possibly could, and not just jumping impulsively into the answer. And with students, he didn't always answer their questions or solve their problems, but adroitly led them to their own answers and solutions, which of course made them feel smarter. He did that to me also. In the early years, we carried out travel and speech clinics in elementary schools that had no speech services in rural Oregon counties. We did quick speech evaluations with the kids, mostly articulation kind of problems, and worked with the teachers to try to train them to work with the kids because they were in this rural area. We traveled to some very remote areas, and here are two of my favorite stories. We traveled in those days in a state car. Some of you might remember they were all painted that dark green. They were state cars. This particular day, Bob was driving. It was a nice day, spring. Had his arm out the window. Might have been smoking his pipe, I don't remember. All of a sudden he went, yow! Jumped. I said, Bob, what's the matter? He said, something hurt my arm. He says, I think I've been stung by a bee. I said, wow. So he was driving, and all of a sudden he turned into this farmhouse driveway, rolled up to the farmhouse, knocked on the door. Pretty soon the farm lady came, and Bob's walking like this. He says, I think I have a bee sting on my arm. And he said, let me see. She walked out and looked at her. He said, yes, you have. Close the door. I don't know if he was expecting that she would provide him with a mud and hay and how manure poultice. And I don't remember the solution other than I think that the stinger was pulled out by a pharmacist who then swabbed his arm with iodine. The other one, a similar rural area, and this is early one morning. Sleeping, waking up, I hear, Don. Don. What? Don. What? There's a horse in our room. So I looked surprisingly to see it, and indeed, this was like a Motel 4. So you would open up you would slide up the door and the windows and hope that they would hold, not knowing what's going to fly in during the night. Wild stock, what do you call it?
Vermin.
Man. No, horses and cows. Livestock. What is it? Livestock. So they were wondering. It was very, very rural, very nice. So when he said there was a horse in my room, I immediately looked up, and sure enough, there was this horse's head with a hay falling out. And Bob, in his wisdom as a city boy, said, "Scat." Who would say scat? Anyway, from Eisenhower to Lily White to bee stings and horses, I'm so pleased and honored to present this Founders Award to Bob, my good friend. 50 years, 1964, 2010, Portland State University Speech and Hearing Sciences Founders Award presented to Robert L. Casteel from the Faculty of the Future on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of Education and Speech and Hearing Sciences, October 24th.
Dr. Casteel would like to say a few words.
Can you hear me all right? I said that to the student, and the guy in the front says, "You can have my seat, I hear him fine." So thank you. My son whispered in my ear and said, "Andy, you're not giving him a mic, are you?" Don and I go back a long way. We're great friends. The other two guys up there, Rod and Daryl, part of that started group, I said the English undergraduate, we survived them, we can survive anybody. We have to honor the first person who was director of the program. We know that it was a great contributor. Yeah. He got certification of accreditation of the program when we were still part of State College, the Third in the Northwest, University of Washington, University of Montana, and then Florida State. And for over 30 years, we're the only group in Oregon to be so accredited. And we were very, very proud. Going back to 56 with Ron, so finally, Bill White and his wisdom hired gone full-time, so he had to be replaced by this guy from Lake Oswego Public Schools. Bob English came over, and we became good friends, and we did a lot of things together. We'd go out and talk to elementary teachers on what they could do. And when they were there, and I guess it was 58 or 60, something like that. And there was a program on TV called Smothers Brothers. And Tom was really weird, so I identified with him. And what he would introduce someone, his brother, Tom's brother was castrated in Paris, serious. And he was supposed to say something nice about his brother and why he was doing the number he was doing. And all of a sudden he said, "Take it." Well, I was kind of impressed with that. And so I'm doing this dog and pony show involved for these elementary teachers, and I do my 15 or 20 minutes, and then I'm through, and I'm supposed to say some nice things about Bob in English. And I said, "Take it." And he kind of choked and said, "Well, thank you. That was my erstwhile colleague." Erstwhile lived on and on and on for 25 years. I was his erstwhile colleague. So I tell him, my sister Dee, she says, "I don't know what erstwhile means." I said, "I don't either, but it must be good." I said, "I'll go look in the dictionary and see what it says." Well, here's what it said. "You used to be my friend." But I really was a friend of his, in spite of being his erstwhile colleague. Understand that person. Oh, we survived those 6, we can survive anything. Anyway, thank you, and I know that this has been a long evening, and I had my surprise for Mary on writing a book on the 50 years, and she encouraged me to do this 20 years ago when I asked her. She gave me some notes of Bob English and so forth. And she was very patient. After 5 years, she said, "How's it coming?" And well, I think after 10 years, she pretty well forgot about it. Anyway, we finally finished it. And now, the tough part is figuring out my scratches by my wife. She was sitting here. She's typing it all, and I feel sorry for her.
All right, we're in the home stretch now. I want you to know that for our next speaker, I prepared an elaborate introduction. And in the interest of time, I'm going to keep it real short. I want to tell you 2 things about our next speaker, which you might not already know, because many of you will know her fairly well. The two things that I want to tell you are, first, that she's been a steadfast advocate for inclusive education of children with disabilities for decades now. And the second thing is that she's been an ally of speech and hearing sciences, our department, our program, and the Oregon Speech Language Hearing Association for as long as I've been alive. And I want to, it's given me great pleasure to introduce former Governor Barbara Roberts.
Well, first I have to figure out, this is the oddest accumulation of stuff up here. No speech department would organize it. Well, first I want to extend my personal and special congratulations to Bob for his much-deserved recognition and for putting up with these guys all these years. So, now I have to admit to you that I did not come to tonight's celebration as a former faculty member in the program or a former professional in speech and hearing sciences. However, I have several rather unique connections to the programs, its faculty, its history, and OSHA. Seeing so many familiar faces here tonight has brought back some fond memories, particularly those special connections. Last year, I was honored to be included in the 40-year celebration in Salem for the passage of the licensure bill for speech pathologists and audiologists. 40 years, it's just incredible. 1973 legislative bill finally recognized Oregon speech pathologists and audiologists as the professionals they were and are. I, however, was not a professional lobbyist, but Bob Blakely and my then state representative, Frank Roberts, convinced me I could take on this part-time legislative lobby effort while I was also lobbying for special education for my autistic son. Can you imagine being able to say no to Blakely and Roberts? So there I was, 40 years ago, helping move a critical agenda for OSHA, and beginning then for the first time to feel like part of the OSHA family. We fought hard for that licensure bill and finally got it passed in both the House and the State Senate. And then we had to battle again to convince the governor to sign the bill. And Governor Tom McCall was no pushover, but we were good. We convinced him to support the bill rather than to veto it. Fortunately, that legislative success kept me connected to your professional work for all the years since. In fact, so connected, I ended up marrying Frank Roberts. And we were married at the home of Bob and Barbara Blakely. You know, when you started something with Bob, you had to finish it. And for all the years that Frank remained in the speech department, part of the time as the head of that department, I was privileged to know almost every person who passed through those halls during those years, plus the colleagues from OHSU who were a major part of what I consider a truly remarkable professional collaboration. I've never seen anything like it anyplace else. Just think about it, 50 years, so many years. So many memories, so many faces, so many successes. So tonight, let's recall them all and celebrate the huge differences those 50 years have made, not only in your lives, but the lives of thousands of others whose lives you've touched. Thank you very much for letting me
Okay, we have one final speaker to talk with us tonight. Here she is. Many of you know Allyson Goodwyn-Craine. She's a member of our advisory board. She also has been in the field for many years longer than I have.
Is that a nice way of saying I'm old, Andy? Good evening. I would like to take a moment to recognize one of our alumni, Sandy Jo Edlison. Some of you may know Sandy Jo. She earned her master's degree in 2005 and has served our community as a speech-language pathologist in the Hillsborough School District. She also provides valuable input for our department as a member of the advisory committee. After receiving a scholarship during her time at PSU, Sandy Jo was inspired to pay it forward. She created the Harrison Edlison Endowed Scholarship to support graduate students in our program. The scholarship will benefit students for years to come, and on behalf of the students and the faculty, Sandy Jo, we thank you.
Next, we have a personal statement from one of our special guests, Mary Gordon-Brannan.
Here at Portland State University, the first memory of Portland State University is going down to the basement of Newburger and being rather feeling intimidated. I thought that I didn't really have the qualifications for working in higher ed. I had an office that was about 10 steps away from Bob Casteel's office, and he was my mentor. He was so helpful and so willing to answer all my questions. Teaching at Portland State was never boring because of all the wonderful students that attended. They helped me realize that I did have some knowledge and information to impart to them. My students always challenged me, and they were the reason that I enjoyed my career at Portland State. I think I learned more from them than I did from my formal education. I spent many years of my career here, and it was a wonderful experience. I'm so appreciative of that. I have a few parting words to share with all of you. I appreciate the love and support I have received from many of you during this difficult time. It's very meaningful to me to be a part of this event. Thanks to everybody for being a part of this wonderful celebration.
From 1993 to 1996, I had the opportunity to serve on the faculty of the Speech and Hearing Sciences program as part of John McMahon's Practicum Placement Development Grant. During that time and for years following, I witnessed Mary's, well, how do you describe it? Maryness. You've heard the challenge about herding cats. Well, I had the front row seat of observing Mary herding lions. Seriously, who among us would be brave enough to facilitate Joan McMahon, Rhea Paul, John Tednowski, Tom Dolan, Meg Martin, Maria Hopple, Mary T. Withers, and me. To describe that group as having strong personalities would be a tremendous understatement. But leaders only follow leaders when they're non-pretentious and authentic in their intentions. And that is why Mary was such an effective instructor and program chair. Somehow, Mary is always accessible. Within a sea of students and colleagues in Mary's life, she always managed to be present. She was solidly grounded as she listened. She was generous in her encouragement. And often she'd laugh. A great leader knows how to laugh. Mary's laugh always intrigued me because I was trying to figure out, how does she laugh on an inhalation? You know, we've all heard it. Mary's commitment to students was always evident. So I'm sure no one in this room would be surprised to learn that several months ago, Mary and her husband Steve created a scholarship fund to support the graduate students in this program. Mary and Steve intended to build this fund over the next couple of years, but with the help of friends here tonight, the Mary Gordon-Brannan Speech and Hearing Sciences Scholarship could easily raise only $8,000 needed to reach endowment. Once endowed, this scholarship will have the capacity to fund students for years to come. Mary, we love you. Steve, thank you. Please take a moment to review the flyer outlining how you can support Mary's scholarship. I hope you'll join me in honoring Mary by making a contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Allyson. We've made it. As you may have noticed, if you have a watch on, we speech people tend to like to talk a little longer than we might ordinarily be able to do. I prepared a number of thank yous. I'm going to cut that short as well in the interest of time. And I want to thank two people very specifically. It's really four, as you'll see in a moment. First, I want to thank Bob Casteel and his wife Barbara for being here tonight and for all the work that both of you have put into this, to establishing and developing this department. And I want to thank Mary Gordon-Brannan and her husband Steve for your contributions over the decades. Your presence here has helped take something that was a memorable evening and turned it into a superlative experience. So thank you. I'm reminded of the words that we heard Bob English say earlier, that we are a community of those with whom we interact. And I'd like to say to Bob, to Mary, and to all of the friends, colleagues, and supporters out there, that our community is stronger and better for your contributions. Thank you very much for being here.